Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Public Allies webinar. Today, I'm joined by the wonderful, amazing Mr. Thanh Campbell. But before we get to his bio and hear about his story, I'm going to share with you a little bit about who Public Allies is, who I am as your host, and then we'll share a little bit about Thanh and get to hear his story. So Public Allies is a nonprofit organization that helps to support the most vulnerable people in society. And we do unique webinars, roundtables, interviews, and business promotions to spread awareness about different perspectives, information, and different ways of healing. We at Public Allies believe there is more than one way of healing. Now, tonight, I'm your host. My name is Jacob Lethbridge. I am also the host of the Authentically Inspired podcast. I'm a motivational speaker and author, and I am on a mission to help inspire the lives of 1 million people and raise the global consciousness of this planet. So I'm really excited about that. Now, Thanh, he was born in, here we go. Let me just pull that over to the right screen. Thanh was born in Vietnam and came over to Canada as part of the last flight out of Saigon in 1975 with 56 other orphan children. Their story was captured numerous times in the media. He has been invited to be a guest on such programs as CBC Radio, TVO, Canada AM, 100 Huntley Street, with the chance to share his life story to the nation. The 57 orphan story has been covered by many newspapers, including the Toronto Star, Hamilton Spectator, Ottawa Citizen, Vancouver Sun, Saigon newspaper, and included in the French consulate newsletter. Most recently, Thanh has written his autobiography titled Orphan 32. Since then, Thanh has been invited to speak at numerous business groups, conferences, and schools across Canada as a keynote speaker, sharing his story of coming to Canada. In 2014, Thanh was awarded the Paul Harris Fellow Award, a prestigious award presented by the Rotary for those whose efforts are commended in community building. Thanh, I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to the Public Allies platform. I'm just so happy that you're here. I'm so grateful that you're here. Thanh and I actually met through an app called Clubhouse. And together, we've just kind of built this amazing community of people together. And I have to say, Thanh is probably one of the best people that I've met on that app. He is a master connector in every area of life and always willing to lift people up. It's brilliant to see. And Thanh, I'm happy you're here.
Jacob, what a great opportunity here. And thank you for bringing me on your show, giving me the space to share my story. And the mutual admiration is there, seeing you on Clubhouse and just seeing you explode, and the people that you're, really bringing into your Clubhouse room in the morning. It's like a magnet, and we're having a lot of fun at the same time, which is great. We can smile, we can laugh, but we also can encourage and stay positive with each other's positivity in the morning, which is fantastic. So. But thank you for that introduction. Sometimes when I'm listening to it, like a lot of people, it's like, who are they talking about? I'd like to meet that person. But that's my story, and I've actually been able to share it on stages around the world, which is phenomenal. You know what I mean? I've traveled to different countries like Haiti, Peru, and shared down there, and to the States, and then Canada. I need to get a little bit more, I guess it would be eastward, Europe. I'd love to go to Dubai. I'd like to kind of share it down in Asia. But we'll get there. The world is, a stage, and, we will get around there for sure. So I'm not sure if you want me just to kind of start in. You kind of, through the introduction, shared a bit about the story. I was part of the last flight out of Vietnam in 1975. And what was happening during that time, it was the Vietnam War. And it was kind of just a harried and, crazy time. What had happened in the beginning of April 1975 is a plane load of children headed off to the United States. and they started something called Operation Baby Lift. And so this was a mission that had started through the United States to take these children who had been abandoned or had been kind of left because of the war, and then wanted to bring them to the United States for a better life. And then different nations started to come on board, and Canada was kind of the last one. Yes, we would take these children in, but by order of the minister, they had to prove that they were true orphans. There was not going to be any, custody battles by, birth families coming back to look for them. And so they agreed over in Vietnam that's, they would do that kind of due diligence. The care workers were kind of upset and disappointed because they wanted to get as many children out, but they had to abide by this, order to only take orphans. So 1 in 300 only got about 60, 70 children. And then by the time they wanted to get them out, there were no planes left in Vietnam. There were no more commercial flights going in out of Tan Son Airport. So they had to wire and send the communication over to Hong Kong. And then in Hong Kong, there just happened to be a training flight from Trenton, Ontario to Hong Kong, a whole crew of Hercules C-130 planes. Now, these are massive planes. Regular cargo is, jeeps and personnel and, supplies. So they said, okay, we'll send one in. And so they flew into war-torn Vietnam, into South Vietnam. The war was descending so fast that, the capital city, Saigon, was about to be taken over. They did receive some, anti-aircraft, artillery on the way down, but they made it in safely. They put a message to the orphanage saying we're ready to go. They piled all the kids into these vans and buses, made out to the airport, and then they started loading these kids onto the plane with cardboard boxes. So can you imagine that picture of babies in banana boxes in orange crates, and then these older ones sitting along the side, and then they took off. And the pilot describes this harrowing event, movie-like, where it's taking off and they have to ascend very, very quickly, and they're using the thrusters, and then they circle in like a corkscrew pattern, he said. And they were being shot at. They were receiving, they could hear the bullets hitting the plane, but they climbed high enough that they got above the ground fire. Missiles were exploding below them, but they never got hit, and then they made it safely into Hong Kong. So in Hong Kong, we were taken care of there. Some babies had to be left behind because they were too sick, and the remainder of the crew and babies carried on. But from there, we flew commercial, and so the babies were actually handed out to regular passengers flying from Hong Kong to Vancouver to hold on to and be taken care of and be cleaned and comforted all the way to Vancouver. And then the same thing happened, Vancouver to Toronto on Air Canada. And then it was in Toronto, we went into a place called Surrey Place Centre, and that's where the Canadian families who had said, yes, we will adopt these kids, came to meet us for the first time. And so that's where the Campbell family came into the picture. They were given a call. They said yes. Actually, it was their 15-year-old daughter, Joan, who said yes to the adoption, and then told her parents later that night that they had adopted a new baby. And then they got home, and the next day, Saturday, April 18th, 1975, they got in their wood panel station wagon, headed down to Toronto, and here I am with the last name Campbell. So, I help people say my name, Wonton Campbell Soup. You'll never forget it. And people laugh, and they love how I help people share that name. So that's how this Vietnamese name got paired with this good Vietnamese last name. And so that story, I've shared across the country to so many people that they were so intrigued. They said, Ton, have you thought of writing your story? Now, I was never a good English student. in high school, all through elementary school, Maine high school, college, red marker, it was just terrible. So I thought, no, I can speak. I finally learned how to do public speaking and got over my fear. I have a book coming out called From Phobia to Platform on how I overcame my fear of public speaking. Never thought I'd be a writer. And enough people, the very first chapter of my book, I say, when one person tells you to write a book, you think about it, but when 100 people tell you, it gets done. And so it got done. And I self-published my book. It's called Orphan 32, probably backwards for you. But that was published in 2013. And I was on tour I don't know how many years now, 7 years, 8 years now. But what the book really is about is a story that happened to me in 2003. I shared my story around the place, and then a family came up to me and said, we actually know another person that was on the flight with you. I've never heard that before. In all of the places I've lived, I had a very unique story to share with people. There was no one who had a story like me. And then someone, how many years later saying that they knew someone, it's like, we'll see. And sure enough, that Friday night, I got a phone call. Hi, my name is Trent Kilner. I was on the same plane as you. And then he tells the whole story. From his perspective, I'm like, same name, same places, same dates. And I'm like, where you been all my life, basically? And so we shared stories, swapped pictures, and very similar kind of family backgrounds, except I was a family of 6. I was the youngest. They stopped after me. He came from a family of 13. So he was their 4th, I think, or 5th, and then they kept on adopting kids. So I don't know what that says about me, Jacob, but anyways, my family was happy with 6, and they stopped. But we got to meet, and then we connected, and then we did some media interviews, and from those media interviews, we actually found 24 out of the 60 in 2 weeks. 24 in 2 weeks. And then we just kept on going and going and going. And about a year's time, we got up to 42, we say, out of the 57 or 60, because a few had passed away. And so we gathered all of these, adoptees, these orphans, together, along with volunteers and the pilots and the care workers. Back in 2006, we had about 250 people get together in Burlington, Ontario, and it was a massive reunion that made it into the newspapers. And again, Jacob, that story, good enough on its own. If it had stopped there, my life would have been complete, would have been beautiful. I got to meet all of these flight mates, but God had different plans, and that story went worldwide and global, around the world, and actually made it back to Vietnam. Well, I get an email of someone who read the article and said, hey, we saw your name and we're looking for a family member with this name. And it had my name, Ton, as part of that name. But it's like 4 names long. And these are my parents' names, and this is the father's name. And I'm like, now hold on a second here. And I pulled out my birth certificate, which there's a copy of it in the book. And I looked at the names, and all of the names matched up. Birth name, parents' names. The only thing the difference was the birth date. Mine said August 1st, 1973. Theirs said May 1st, 1973. So I'm like, okay, that's my loophole. Different date, not the same person, not me, kind of thing. So I went to a friend of mine. I said, what do I do? He said, well, to prove or deny anything, you should do a paternity test. And I'm like, I'm not going on Montel Williams to do a paternity test, right? I'm not going on Maury. And he says, no, there are labs that do it for shows. You know what I mean? And I said, okay, well, if you find the lab, I'll do it, the test. Well, sure enough, calls me later and says, I found the lab. They're going to come to your house in Hamilton. And they do the cheek swab, CSI, they do the cheek swab. And we sent the kid over to Vietnam. And then that was in December of 2006. And then January 2007, I got the reply via mail, piece of paper, and on the bottom, it's highlighted in red. There's a number, and it says probability of paternity equals 99.999%. 99.999%. And I get a phone call, and it's the lab technician. He says, Ton, I bet you want to know what that means. And I said, I think I know, but you need to tell me. And he says, Ton, if you could fit 100,000 men in the same room, only one of them could have the same genetic makeup as you. You have found your father. Speechless. You know what I mean? I'm not one to be speechless or, not know what to say. I was speechless, didn't know what to say. But then I said, I wasn't looking for him. And he said, well, he found you. And so we did a phone call, long distance, through a translator, and heard his whole story, my whole story. And it was how I was taken by mistake. And so I encourage people, if you want to know what that mistake was, read the book, Orphan 32. You can purchase it through me. You can reach me at orphan32.com. And I'd be glad to send a book out to you. I have a children's book out too called Thoughts and Found, Orphan 32 Goes Home. And I love sharing my story. But it's not just to share my story. A lot like, our friend Laura Lake helps people craft their stories. And what's the purpose of sharing our story? Well, first of all, it's to tell the story. Second of all, it's to inspire others to tell their story. And really what I want to do is build community. How do we build community? And that's why I love your podcast, because it's stories, and it's sharing, and it's strengthening our communities by telling our stories. Now, maybe it's a story of resilience. Maybe it's our story of overcoming. Maybe it's our story of, I just lived a normal life, and that's inspiring to some people who have gone up and down. Like, you had a life that's like this. That's awesome, So everybody has a story, and everybody's story can inspire. And we're going through a period right now in the world where we come through 3 years, 4 years where we've had to separate from each other. We've been very isolated from each other. And I think it's time now we come back together as a community, and we build this, what we call a village, the global village, and really start understanding who we are, as individuals, but as a community as well. And I love the name of this, allies, that we're working together. We want to help each other. So there's an African kind of, not a proverb, but kind of a philosophy called Ubuntu. And it is, I am because you are. And, as you grow better and as you get better, I can become better. And so that's why I share my story. That's why I love going around, because as I get to share stories, my story, you are free to share your story, and then we get to become better people. We can create a better world, because now we appreciate where we have come from and the challenges that we've had to overcome to be who we are and to be the best version of ourselves. And I've seen that in you, Jacob, that, at the beginning of Clubhouse, it was, I wouldn't say timid, but you were just maybe a little bit shy. And now how you've overcome that, and you're allowed to, you've given yourself permission to laugh and be funny and have your sense of humor and be Jacob and call yourself Vitamin J, and just have fun and not put on airs, but actually, create that character that people love and are compelled to join. So that's my story, and I hopefully people resonate with it. I don't know if you have questions or if anyone has questions.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
The first one, and it goes toward storytelling, and for people who maybe don't know how to tell their story, or maybe they don't even know what their story is. What kind of advice would you give to that person, or maybe even that, someone who's just growing up, like that teenager, right? Because I know you do a lot of speaking in schools. So what kind of advice would you give to maybe that teenager who's like, well, I don't know how to define myself. I don't know what my story is.
it's not a simple thing because it is a craft, and that's why Laura coaches people and I coach people when they're writing books. But it often does follow a very simple dream, struggle, victory. Those are kind of the inspirational stories. So, as young children, we kind of have this idealism that we're born into, and then kind of life happens. And so it's being able to share your story of what are those life happenings or obstacles that kind of came in your way. How did you learn to overcome them? Who inspired you to overcome and to put the belief in that you could overcome them? Maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a mentor, maybe it was a pastor, whoever it might be. Maybe it was someone who actually negatively inspired you to become better. Maybe it was a teacher who says you won't amount to anything, or you won't achieve, or don't even bother, and you're saying, I'll show them. And you overcame just by sheer determination of proving someone else wrong. And then it is what you got into, and it's the life lesson by getting into what you do, and then now doing it and helping and understanding what you can do for the world by doing your craft. So for instance, in high school, I was deathly afraid of speaking in public. Like, hide under your desk, break out into sweats, maybe in hives, just with the thought that the teacher might call on me. Like, I hated projects that you had to stand up and tell what you did. But the funny thing is, I liked musicals and drama, and I got involved with the theater, and I could do musicals, and I could sing and dance and be silly on stage. And then when I had to do a school project, shake, right? And then eventually I learned how to overcome that fear. Well, that's part of my story is, here I am, a young kid. Then I had that obstacle overcome. I overcame that, and now I'm doing it as not just doing it, but I'm actually doing it as a living. Public speaking is my living. And I went from fear of it to now, give me more. How does that happen? So being able to tell your story in that way. Sometimes there are sad stories of abuse, and that's very hard to talk about. So I think someone has to come to a point of healing in their story before they have to get past the brokenness and the hurt and all of that before they can actually tell their story. So sometimes people want to tell their story, but it's for the wrong reasons. It's a victim card, or it's they want to hear the pity party, not the right reason. And so I encourage people to tell their story for the right reasons, to always have your audience in mind of what are they going to benefit by hearing your story. And maybe it's too soon. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think that's completely solid advice, and I can completely relate to you when you talk about being afraid to go up and do that presentation, because that was me too. And I remember even in university at one point, right? I know it's a big fear amongst people. And I remember even in university, I went to one of my professors and I said, look, can I do the presentation just for you in your office? I don't care if you mark me down an extra 10%. I cannot do it in front of the class. And she said, I'm not going to mark you down, but yeah, you can come do it in my office. And I ended up doing really well.
Okay.
Although after that, I ended up joining the public relations program, where I was then forced to go speak in front of people. And later on, I ended up joining Toastmasters and getting a lot more comfortable and out of my shell, being able to speak to anyone.
There's great organizations like that. Yeah, there's great organizations that help people overcome the fear. I don't want to get into the public speaking side of things, but I really like people who speak from their heart rather than form. But I just really want people to feel that, whether it's through book, whether it's standing up in front of people, to really feel assured that their story can inspire someone and change. The last thing I want to say is, yes, at a funeral, other people would say, like, some people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. There's that deathly afraid, but no one has died from public speaking. I just want people to know that and know I'm sharing a story. But when it's like a candle, if you have a candle that's lit and then you take another candle and you light it from that candle, it takes nothing away from this candle that lit this other candle. And now you have 2 candles that can go and light other candles, and then you've got 4 candles, and then you've got 8. You know what I mean? And then it just is exponential, and our world would change exponentially when people get the courage to see the value and see the intrinsic inspiration that they can provide by telling their stories. So I'm grateful for podcasts like this and podcasts like yours that are encouraging people to say, come on my show, share your story. So if you can get in contact with Jacob, if you feel you have a story, get in contact with Jacob, get in contact with other hosts of podcasts, and just practice and practice and practice and practice. And soon you'll learn to love it.
Yeah. And if I could just add one thing to that, Ton, and you might be able to speak to this a little bit as well as we kind of wrap up here, the importance of community and getting yourself around like-minded people. And I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but to get yourself around like-minded individuals who will encourage you, not discourage you.
That's right.
Like you were saying with the candles,
right.
Light somebody else's candle, and maybe you're that person who needs that candle lit. And if you find the right kind of people, like Ton, like my friend Ilya, like my friend Laura or Anthony, or anyone who joins my morning clubhouse room, we all light each other's candles and we fuel each other to become better.
Yeah. Like, there's that illustration of the crabs in a bucket, and then one crab is trying to leave, and there's, that's the world. The world wants to pull you down and keep you from excelling. You want to get into a different bucket of people like us where we're pushing each other up and saying, go excel, go fly, go do this. We're right there behind you. You've got your tribe, you've got your people in your corner that are gonna push you, keep you accountable. That's what 30-day challenges are for, or 5-day challenges are for. We've got a team of people there to encourage you to take that one step, take that one more push-up, take that one more sit-up, do that one more mile, take that one more lap, you know what I mean? Write that one more page, whatever it is that we're challenging each other to do. That's community. That's the community that you want to be in. That's what Ubuntu is. When you get better, we all get better, right? And you make the world a better place by making the better you. And so I think people need to take that time of how to become the best version of themselves. Stop looking at the world and saying, this is what they want me to become. No. How do I become the best version of myself, and then show that to the world, right? And that's what I had to do. And it's sometimes you have to kind of go underground for a long time to find out and figure out who you are before that is, or else you're just playing a charade, or you're just playing a game. And you don't want to play a game. That's tiring. When you're playing a game, that's tiring. When you can be your true, authentic self, that's energizing. And when you're energized, that energy is going to go out and be contagious and energize others. But when you're playing a game, when you're putting this facade up, when you're hoping that no one's going to see behind, right? That's energy draining for you, and that's going to be energy draining for other people as well, because you're always kind of putting your defense up. You're always going to be putting up your walls, rather than welcoming them in to your authenticity, welcoming them into your story, and to become part of your story.
Yes, totally agree. Ton, thank you so much for sharing your story today. For the people watching, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you, to find your books? I've linked a few links in the description of this video so people can go there, but
Awesome.
I'd rather them hear it directly from your mouth.
Instagram, Facebook, I live on those 2 platforms. They can contact me via LinkedIn as well. If you have LinkedIn, my name is kind of unique, so you see it on the screen, THANH Campbell. Connect me through there. You can go to Amazon, look up Orphan 32. You can Google my name, you'll see everything come up on YouTube. But as far as purchasing books, it's best to contact me directly. And if you are interested in having me come and share my story at an event or some kind of gala, I'm always open to being able to share my story. I was just talking to someone in Burlington today about doing that. So I do it again because there are other people who need to hear it, so that they can share their story, so that they can be unlocked and unleashed.
Love it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Ton, thank you for being here. I'm going to switch this around. There we go. Thank you so much for being here. Come in from your private jet. By the looks of it, not only were you taken over in a cargo plane, you're now flying
You can
private.
tell it's not real. Yeah, that's right. You can tell it's not real. You don't want to see the mess behind me.
Ton, thank you so much for being here today. And on behalf of Public Allies, I appreciate you being here, sharing your story. You're going to inspire even more people. And like you always say, always hope. Thank you guys so much for being here. And we will see you in the next webinar. Bye-bye.